Your Royal Highness, lovely to see you. Great to see you.
You made it.
You've said this is a very special place for you in the past. You've said this is your happy place. What is so special about Birk Hall and Balmoral?
He remained unmoved, silent, and ever vigilant for a number of decades, standing just out of sight. Having been assigned to the most prominent family in the world, his job was to keep a watchful eye on them, protect them, and remain silent. Not even interviews. There will be no memoirs. There are no leaks. To this point, this week, a former bodyguard for the royal family broke his silence. He had previously served under King Charles and Princess Diana, and he later went on to protect Prince William, Kate Middleton, and their children. It was not a scandalous revelation that he made for the sake of making headlines. There was something more profound, is darker. The words of a man who says, in a very straightforward manner, "I saw too much," are a haunting reflection. Over the course of riot, international tours, and funerals for family members, he has protected them. In the past, he has prevented cameras from being taken of young Princess Charlotte, as well as intercepted threats made against Prince George. Additionally, he has walked silently behind the coffin of Princess Diana. Both the public mask and the private unraveling have been witnessed by him. Behind those palace gates, he says, there is a world that the general public will never be able to comprehend in its entirety. And it's possible that this is the issue. According to this exclusive account, which was obtained from anonymous sources, the individual who was formerly in charge of protecting the royal family now asserts that he was also protecting secrets. The tragic death of Princess Diana, the conflict between Charles and William, and the heartbreaking question that a young George once asked that broke him on the spot are all examples of secrets that have been passed down through the generations spanning multiple generations. Why do you speak at this time? He gives the following explanation. Because the lies are becoming more audible than the truth. This is not a piece featured in a tabloid. That is the voice of a person who was present at the event, while we were driving, throughout the hallways, during the time that the fairy tale broke at that moment. And what he is revealing has the potential to force a nation to confront a painful truth, that behind the golden image of the monarchy is a human story that they have tried their best to conceal. To this point, he is the very best of the very best, and he was selected by hand from the Special Air Service, one who is not only a soldier, but also a strategist, an individual who has been trained to blend in, to anticipate danger, and to read a room before it starts to shift. Over the course of more than 20 years, he served not only as a royal protection officer, but also as a living shield between the most famous family in Britain and the chaos that existed in the world. Until further notice, his identity will remain a secret. However, those who work with him and those who are familiar with him are aware of his reputation. After being entrusted with the responsibility of guarding Princess Diana during her final years, he was later transferred to the care of Prince William and Prince Harry when they were teenagers. As time went on, his role shifted, and he eventually became a member of the select group of individuals who were tasked with the responsibility of protecting Princess Charlotte and Prince George during the years when they were at their most vulnerable. One of the former palace aides stated that he was more than just a bodyguard. When things started to get serious, he was the person you called. He's been in royal nurseries, blacked-out motorcades, and private jets, according to reports. While he was observing the wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton from a hidden vantage point, he remained in the background and watched as the next generation took the spotlight. In addition, he was present during the time that King Charles ascended to the throne, and he was also present when Camilla Parker Bowles was initially introduced to royal protocol in a cautious manner. On the other hand, something started to break apart beneath the polished suits, radio earpieces, and professional demeanor that was so tight-lipped. He perceived more than just dangers. He witnessed people breaking down. There are betrayals. Secrets are kept. Additionally, as time went on, those secrets became too burdensome to bear. It was he who stated, "We are trained to protect life." However, there is no training that can teach you how to protect someone's truth when the truth is the thing that is breaking them. Now that he has retired from his position in the royal service, he is prepared to talk about the experiences that haunted him, the mutterings contained within the portraits, the tears that were shed behind the rites. They were under his protection, to cast a shadow. However, there are some shadows that are too far to ignore. When viewed from the outside, Buckingham Palace exudes an air of opulence and tradition. In corridors lined with gold, appointments that are perfectly timed, pageantry that is flawless. On the other hand, the former bodyguard claims that there was a house that was constantly holding itself together behind the columns and crowns. He recalls the sound of Princess Diana's heels clicking down the hallway in the middle of the night. Long after the staff had gone to sleep, he could hear them clicking down the hallway. On foot she would go. You are not to go anywhere, simply to move around, considering that it was too painful to remain still. A few days before her last trip to Paris, he remembers hearing her sobbing softly in a garden alcove that was secluded from the rest of the garden. There is no media. There are no cameras. I am just a mother, all by myself, in her misery. He reports that there were times when he felt the urge to inquire about her well-being. If you are not spoken to, however, you do not speak, and that was the standard. The explosive argument that took place between Charles and Diana behind closed doors is something that he remembers vividly. The argument was so loud that it even silenced the kitchen staff. He continues by saying, "The walls in the palace are not as thick as they appear to be." And then there was Princess Anne, who was icy, authoritative, and fiercely private. She didn't shed a tear at any time. You were always able to tell when she was in a bad mood. The silence that surrounded her became eerily abrupt. As the years went by, he witnessed Prince William develop into the role of heir, carrying the weight of two worlds, the expectations of his father and the legacy of his mother. Following the passing of Diana, William had very little contact with people who were not in his immediate circle. When William was 17 years old and attending his first solo engagement, a photographer yelled something offensive about Diana. The guard remembers being just meters away from the photographer at the time. "I was afraid that William would break a tooth because he was clenching his jaw so tightly. He didn't even flinch, though. That's when I realized that he had turned into steel." He claims that the palace had not experienced gentleness in many years prior to the arrival of Kate Middleton, who became a member of the family. On the other hand, she was not immune to the pressure. Whenever the cameras were on, she would smile. On the other hand, I witnessed her bursting into tears about 30 seconds after she had stepped behind the curtain. The most challenging times? Keeping Charlotte and George safe and sound. Two children who were born into a dynasty to which they had no choice but to be born. He recalls George, who, when he was 6 years old, became perplexed after reading a tabloid. The question that he posed was, "Why does everyone lie to us?" He looked up. As for Charlotte, she is daring and bright, but she is getting tired of being followed. At one point, she communicated to me, "If I smile, will they fly away?" People were seen waving their hands and wearing tiaras. However, he witnessed a family crumbling under the pressure of their legacy. And there is no amount of protocol that could ever completely conceal the cracks. He had been through everything, including the tears, the tension, the threats that were whispered, and the silences that screamed louder than any scandal of any kind. He hid what he saw for a number of years, trying to persuade himself that it was not his obligation to speak out about it. However, the event that ultimately resulted in the breach of that vow did not take place in the public eye. It took place in Balmoral, which is a place that is far away from the press, far away from politics, and far away from safety. According to what he said, "It was a moment that was so raw that I knew I couldn't keep carrying it. It was supposed to be a peaceful getaway for the whole family. Playing on the grass was what the children were doing." In the sitting room, Kate was assisting Charlotte with a puzzle that she was working on. On the other hand, he asserts that the events that took place behind closed doors that evening altered everything. A private confrontation between King Charles and Prince William, which the latter refers to as emotionally volcanic, broke out over the future of the monarchy, as well as the way in which Camilla's growing influence was affecting the children. He describes the yelling as unfiltered pain from two men pretending they weren't grieving the same ghost. Citation needed. It had nothing to do with policy. That was all about Diana. Even so, having spent all of these years, in the later hours of that day, George approached him, his eyes wide and his body shaking. He inquired of me, "Are Mummy and Daddy heading out of the house as well? Not even 10 years old." It was at that moment that he became aware. The legacy of silence was no longer protecting them, the speaker said. They were suffering as a result of it. Not the shouting, however, was what ultimately broke him. Rather, it was the cover-up that came after it. After receiving an order from a senior assistant, the security staff was instructed to delete surveillance logs, remove timestamps, and label the night as non-eventful. The phrase, "a burial of truth before it could become a scandal," was what he used to describe the event. He had the ability to do so, hold on to his pension, submerge yourself in the background. However, he did not. I chose to remain silent in their presence. However, I never divulged my soul to them. During that evening, he came to the conclusion that the world needed to be aware of the truth about what goes on behind the royal veil. What follows is a list of happenings, recollections, and revelations that are etched into the mind of a man who was only a few inches away from history. Not all of these things are confirmed, and not all of them can be proven. And the information that he provides paints a picture that is significantly more gloomy and depressing than any fairy tale. 1. Diana's very last few weeks. According to him, Princess Diana had started making preparations for a low-key return to London life, not as a member of the royal family, but rather as a public advocate for causes that the firm had politely asked her to drop. According to him, senior staff members snooped around in her communications, redirected her mail, and even removed a personal diary from her Kensington apartment the day after she passed away. They desired for her to leave, still alive, then again out of sight. 3. Camilla's secret command and control. It is his assertion that Queen Camilla was not merely the woman who accompanied the king, rather she was the gatekeeper to Charles's moods. He asserts that she had the ability to exert influence over who William saw, what engagements he attended, and the frequency with which Kate could speak directly to senior advisors, without Camilla's office intervening during those conversations. Although William had respect for her, he did not have faith in her. 3. The heartbreak that Princess Anne knew she was having. According to him, a personal tragedy that she has never disclosed to the public lies behind her image of iron will. There was a sudden breakup in a long-term relationship that was brought on by institutional interference. Anne never shed a tear. After that, however, she did not communicate with her brother for almost a whole year afterwards. 4. Charlotte and the paparazzi incident. It is one of the most unsettling allegations that Princess Charlotte was in Norfolk at the time of the incident. He claims that a drone that was under the control of a private photography agency crashed close to the family's estate. This incident was never reported in the media. Charlotte had not sustained any physical injuries, but she had survived emotionally. For a week, she was unable to continue sleeping through the night. On multiple occasions, she asked, "Are they going to get me?" 5. The question of George's innocence. "Why don't we talk about her?" Prince George asked Kate after he saw an image of Diana in a newspaper, according to the guard who recalled the incident. He claims that Kate was calm, but she was obviously in a state of shock. She sat him down and made the statement, "We do, but not when the entire world is paying attention." Exhaustion that Kate is not revealing. Even though she is frequently praised for her composure, the guard describes instances in which Kate Middleton would sit by herself in a chamber room that was not being used, with her eyes closed, just to take a breath. When I asked her about it, she once told me, "It's not the crown that's heavy. It is the ability to be perfect at all times." It was not treason that he witnessed. A conspiracy was not involved. The protocol, the pressure, and the centuries of tradition had stripped humanity to its very lowest level. There was no need for them to have another guard, he says. They required the protection of the truth from a third party. That is exactly what he is doing right now. Following the disclosure of the interview, the palace immediately entered a state of damage control. The night was filled with ringing phones. Lawyers were brought into action. During the midnight hours, aides were observed entering both Clarence House and Kensington Palace, which is unusual even for a royal emergency. Within a matter of hours, the Royal Press Office issued a statement that was succinct and carefully worded. The statement read, "These claims are inaccurate, deeply irresponsible, and serve only to sensationalize private matters that have no bearing on the public role of the royal family." However, the panic was directed inward as well. King Charles reportedly held a meeting with senior aides and legal counsel behind closed doors. This meeting took place behind the scenes. Sources claim that Camilla was incensed and demanded that the palace investigate all possible legal options. However, it was not as easy as that, mainly due to the fact that the bodyguard had not directly named names. He had not broken any laws pertaining to national security. Furthermore, and most importantly, an excessive number of former employees were subtly confirming his account. "He's not lying," explained a former aide who wished to remain anonymous to a journalist. "All he is doing is repeating the things that we were all instructed to forget." Insiders disclosed that there was discussion regarding the enforcement of a gag order, which is a non-disclosure agreement that had been signed in the past. However, the risk of further public backlash was too great. A silence from him at this moment would appear to be an admission. Even Prince William was said to be shaken, not because of the content of the report, but rather because of the fact that his children, George and Charlotte were being drawn into a media storm that he had worked so hard to protect them from. One person with knowledge of the royal family used a single word to describe the atmosphere inside the palace: unraveling, mainly due to the fact that, for the first time in many years, the monarchy was not being attacked by external sources or tabloids. A member of its own family was causing it to be haunted. A fire broke out on the internet within a few hours. Videos from the interview were shared widely across social media. On both Instagram and TikTok, users reposted quotes that evoke strong feelings. #Royal Reckoning, #Palace Protector, and #Let Them Be Human are some of the hashtags that have started trending all over the world. It was said that the former bodyguard was a hero by some. He was accused of betrayal by other people. In spite of this, it was abundantly clear that his words had touched a nerve. People were no longer talking about tiaras and traditions within the context of talk shows and podcasts. They were discussing issues pertaining to mental health, the scrutiny of childhood, and the emotional toll that the crown takes on its subjects. Kate's quiet exhaustion was something that mothers could relate to. In defense of the Guard's sense of duty, veterans spoke out. The younger generations, who had been skeptical of the monarchy for a long time, were paying attention not to the scandal, but rather to the humanity that was hidden beneath the spectacle. The results of public polls revealed a sudden decrease in support for senior royals. This was not due to anger, but rather to empathy. People did not behave in a hostile manner towards the family. What they were doing was calling into question the system that prioritized silence over sincerity. One comment on YouTube that went viral summed up the situation perfectly. "We never needed another royal expose. We were in desperate need of someone to finally say, 'They are out of it.'" That is exactly what the Guard chose to do. Not for the sake of sport did he reveal secrets. In order to remind the world that even kings and queens are susceptible to breaking, he slowly pulled back the curtain just a little bit. There are also instances in which the truth does not destroy tradition. It prevents it from happening. He had no intention of ever speaking. Never once did he seek fame. Over the course of his life, he never stood in front of power, but rather behind it. He made a different decision, however, when silence turned into complicity. He chose truth. On the other hand, he witnessed two children, George and Charlotte, grow up in a world where love had to be scripted and sorrow had to be hidden. He also witnessed Princess Diana grieving alone, Charles struggling under the weight of his legacy, Camilla exercising quiet control, and Kate carrying expectations that were impossible to fulfill. Indeed, he witnessed happiness, but he was also aware of the price. "They are some of the best people," he said, "but they are unable to escape. It was necessary for someone to express it. In order to hurt them, he did not name names. It was done in order to humanize them." His desire was for the general public to refrain from demanding perfection from individuals who were barely able to maintain their composure behind closed doors. Furthermore, as a result of his actions, he became something that no title could ever grant: a guardian of knowledge. His revelations might not be as prominent in the news. The palace might be able to fix the cracks. In the same way that they always do, the royal family will move on. Those who were able to hear his voice and those who witnessed the unfiltered reality that he had the courage to share will not forget, because there are times when the most powerful demonstration of loyalty is simply refusing to lie any longer. Taking a bullet was a part of his training. Nevertheless, in the end, he decided to take the chance and tell the truth. In light of this, the entire world is now aware that he was more than just their bodyguard. He was the witness for them. Also, he witnessed far too much to remain silent.